We are 1 week away from the Bitcoin halving, and there's still a pullback going on from a pre-halving run-up. This saw Bitcoin soar past its previous all-time highs even prior to the Bitcoin halving. Now, this is simply the stair step that crypto does during a bull run, where it does 2 steps forward and then 1 back. But that step back doesn't last for forever. The bull run is still on schedule. We have a nice pullback. And what are you going to do to use this time well? Well, today, Paul is joining us for some top-level price analysis as we dive into the charts. We'll also go through some tokens that we have already lined up, and we'll take your suggestions as well as what you want us to look at. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. If you, like me, came into crypto because you realized the potential for life-changing gains over a bigger period, like 4 to 8 years, and you're looking for discussion on becoming a solid, unshakable, savage crypto investor, like a Navy SEAL of crypto investing, you're in exactly the right place and the right family, the Rainmaker family. Now, the reason I created this channel is because I was once new to crypto myself 7 years ago. And back then, I was looking for a crypto channel and a group that understood crypto as an investment and discussed important things like investment cycles, the pros and cons of different projects, the risks that those projects really face, and guesses at upside if it came together well. And I didn't really find a group like that, so we created it. And I say we because it's not just me anymore. It's a family of rainmakers. And you'll see them here already in the chat with Bugsy and DC jumping in and saying hi. You'll find them in our free Telegram group, and you'll especially find them in our private Patreon group that allows you access to our Rainmaker private Discord. And in the private Discord, this is where the best discussion and very best info is. There are other benefits too, but you will have to join us to find out. Do note, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul invests in many, many different markets, way beyond what I invest in, and he is also not a financial advisor, so this is not to be taken as financial advice. If you haven't already, do make it rain on that like button and strap in for the show because Paul is joining us from Definity. Paul, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure as always. We're in a consolidation period, aren't we? We can always feel it. The run up in Bitcoin and everything else, it's needed a breather. We're getting a breather. Question marks over whether this is the top. You know, is this it? Is there going to be a big correction in all markets? We had some interesting data out today, and we can get into that and have a look through the markets. But you know, it's a very important period, I would say, and it always is. Really, it's like we're always living in interesting times, as they say, and as the proverb goes. I think it's a Chinese proverb, but it is a very interesting time. But the main question that I think most people are going to be asking is this the top? Is this over, or have we got more to go? And despite the Bitcoin halving coming up, will the market go higher or is it going to go lower? So I think there's a few clues as to what might happen. But we need to, I mean, I'm looking at it through the lens of the markets and the sentiment and the price charts, but you know, it's like a detective puzzle or case where you're trying to put all the pieces together and work out what is correct, but there are some very interesting clues out there.
Yeah, what I love is like, so I love predictability in markets, and there's no full such thing as predictability. Like, you know, I was talking to a good friend of mine, Doctor of Stuff, like yesterday, and he was like, you know, a lot of times people look for guarantees, and the truth is, in life we deal in probabilities because there are no guarantees. Because like, I'm not guaranteed to wake up tomorrow. Now, it's such a high probability that I'm going to say I'm going to wake up tomorrow, but it's not even guaranteed. And in markets, there are no guarantees, but we deal in probabilities, and price analysis starts to give us some clues on which probabilities what the probabilities are looking like. They'll break higher, break lower, as well as pattern analysis, like every 4 years, usually a little bit later than what's happening this time. So this early run up that we broke the previous all-time highs, that was early. But we've then had a pullback. So it's getting people worried like, oh my gosh, you know, are we wrong? Is it not going to go up? Is it going to go down? Especially non-crypto people. that haven't looked deeper at a 4-year pattern. They're just like scared to death that, oh my gosh, I just bought Bitcoin and now it's dropping, and what if it goes to zero? Because they don't know the probabilities or how to understand what the probabilities are. What are some of your thoughts as you've been watching the markets this past couple of weeks? They've been really interesting.
Yeah. On the probabilities thing, if you want guaranteed returns, Bernie Madoff was giving 1% guaranteed a month. There's no such thing as guaranteed anything, really. And actually, a lot of people fell for that because, in fact, that was the clue that there was a problem, because you can't have consistent returns like that without risk, without pullbacks, because the markets pull back. So whatever your strategy is, if it's buying breakouts or going with trends, or people can have strategies that makes money when the market's in a range, and therefore when it's in a trend, they're not going to make money. So there has to be some market environment where you're not making money, because you can't just always make money. There's got to be some form of correction. Even if you are making money for a long period of time, the market volatility will eventually change, and the market dynamics will change. And that is the only thing that you can 100% guarantee, that the market dynamics will change over a period of time. So whatever the people get used to, once they're used to it, it changes. And I remember very, very clearly, because part of my history is, I was an educator and I used to teach at a university in London. And I was teaching some new traders who just started out, and their introduction was during the global financial crisis around 2007, 2008, when we had huge volatility. And that was their starting point expectation of how much the markets moved. They expected the Dow to move between 800 and 1,000 points all the time, because that's all they were used to. That's all they'd seen. And then when the volatility went back to kind of normal, they couldn't cope with it, because, they'd never seen that sort of environment. So this is fairly typical of what happens. The market gets used to that. People get used to what they've seen. And that's why it's so important to look at it from the perspective that you're looking at it from. And, dare I say it, I am looking at it from where you've looked at a few cycles, and you've looked over decades to see how the market responds at different times, and what becomes usual and what becomes unusual. And it's fair to say that, Bitcoin has had a fantastic run, from the lows that we were talking about when we were saying, look, this is just a correction, it's all going to go up. And it's gone up a massive amount. Now, to expect it to then keep going and going and going is not really realistic. That's not the normal sort of market situation. What's more normal is the market has a rest, a pullback, a correction, and then off it goes again. Now, in terms of what we're looking at right now, today we had a really strong, well, I say really strong, we had a CPI number that came in at 3.4%, which was much higher than what they were expecting. I think they might have been looking for 3.1, maybe 3.2. And they got 3.4. So that's a big number. Now, last week and the week before, I was saying there was something strange about the dollar being strong, and I wasn't sure why it was. And it's been acting very unusually compared to the rest of the markets. And so the first chart I'd like to put up is actually of the US dollar, which is the dollar index, which is actually pushing up a little bit against, and it's only in this range, right? So it's not like it's in an upward trend, but it has just been a little bit annoyingly strong than it should be. And it's like, what is this reason? Is there like a crisis coming? Is there a banking crisis coming? Is there, what could possibly be the reason that people want to buy US dollars? And so it's been digging its heels in a little bit, but it's nothing out of the ordinary in terms of its overall trend. So what's going on here is the strong number is now being absorbed by the market, and we'll see how far it can go before it then turns down, which it will, and then that will actually ease some pressure on broader markets. It will be the equivalent of an interest rate cut, whether we get one or not. Now the market's pricing in less chance of a cut, which is causing a correction in the Dow Jones. And the Dow Jones needed to correct. It gone up in a straight line virtually from October last year, when everybody thought the world was going to end, and World War III and all the noises that were being made. Michael Burry talking about this big options trade and everything, and that's all gets forgotten, doesn't it? But yeah, the market just went straight up, and it's correcting a little bit. So that's nothing to indicate that the overall trend has changed. We're not suddenly in a bear market, we're in a correction, and the market, we're going to see risk on assets potentially take a little bit of a pullback here, and that in the long-term scheme of things isn't a bad thing. It's something to get ready for. It's something to position yourself for, to look for pullbacks, to see what you want to buy, to see what coins are actually in the next move up, kind of leading the way to jump on those first, and then maybe look at the ones that are lagging to see when they jump aboard. So interestingly, just to give you a flavor of how things work, the UK stock market, for example, which has been underperforming, is now starting to potentially outperform a little bit. Like today, it's actually, well, it's just closed now, but it's showing down 3.5, but it was actually up on the day compared to everything else that was down. And that's mainly because a lot of oil and gas companies are constituents of the FTSE, and commodity companies, and those are doing really well. Now, if you want to see what's going on in commodities, we've got nickel. Hang on, where is it? Zinc has just broken out. We've got aluminium that's just broken out. We've got lead that's breaking out. We've got not iron ore. We've got high grade copper that is breaking out. We've got gold that has broken out. We've got silver that has broken out. We've got platinum, which is in a range, and it has been for a while. That's been a bit of a one that's stuck, but it might break out, and maybe palladium that could be basing. So we've got a lot of commodities that are turning around. And why is that important to a cryptocurrency show? Well, it's important because it's showing that there is underlying demand coming in, and that is much more important than whether we've had a strong CPI number and whether interest rates go up or not. So that's telling me that the sentiment is positive towards risk on assets. As we mentioned before, we've got China that's turning around. That was, supposed to be, well, they talked about deflation and saying how prices were going to keep going down. And we've had an upward trend since the 5th of January. For the February, we've had an upward trend and a reversal of this downward move. And a lot of people are short China, expecting it to go much lower. We hit the 200-day moving average, or 200-week moving average on this chart, and the market's had a little correction, but it is still recovering. And I think this is a really important sign for risk on. When they've got more money, everyone has more money. More money will flow into, commodities. They'll flow into equities. It will flow into Bitcoin. It will flow into the altcoins. There will be more money definitely washing around in the future. And it will just take a reversal in the US dollar. So we'll absorb this strong number. And I think what will happen is the market will sort of settle down and see it as a temporary thing. I haven't broken down what the inflation numbers are being caused by, but I will have a look at that and see whether it's something that's turning down. Because interestingly enough, in the UK, Tesco, who you may have heard of in the US, but they're a big food company, food retailer. And they're saying that price pressures are easing, which has allowed them to make bigger profits, which means if they're saying that, it means that they're going to start cutting prices again. Mm-hmm. So I think, prices will come down, and this is temporary, and we will still potentially get some really good inflation numbers. So the next one, I'll be so interested to see whether actually this is the peak, short-term peak of inflation, and whether it starts to come down now, and whether the market will start to anticipate it from today. Now, what that means for Bitcoin and everything else in the short term, the market is looking for an excuse to take some profits. So we are just still stuck in this range, which is absolutely fine. It's not a top. It's nothing more than a consolidation at this stage. It's not formed what I would call a double top or a reversal. It's just saying we're going to go sideways. Now, last week, I drew in this line and said, look, this is a triangular constriction, and that's usually a long-term sideways move before a breakout to the upside, but you do have to wait for it to complete. Now, it's had an attempt to break the high, and that's failed. So it's just, what we do is just draw this line and look at the peaks and see where the peaks are. And it's trading within this range, which is fine. and this range is getting more and more tight. It's tightening up, and what we ultimately need to do is see where it wants to break out. Will it break out to the upside or downside? At this point, I don't know. And the overall trend being up means the bias for me is still to the upside. So this hasn't ended the trend. And even if we did get a correction, and it came back down to, say, this 54,000 level, given where we are and given all the risk on stuff that's going on, I still think it's going to be a buying opportunity. It'll be a buying opportunity for everything else. And it's just a time to just sort of get ready to be looking at what you might want to add to. Personally, I might be thinking let's just wait a little bit and let the correction play itself out, and then start jumping in. But each product is different. Each product can, things can move against the trend, ahead of the trend. Things can still be in consolidations and not broken out yet. So we have to weigh it up on their own individual merits. But broadly speaking, I think the underlying kind of position is that we're in a macro bull market, and any pullbacks are an opportunity to buy.
Yeah, it's exciting to see these pullbacks on some of the altcoins have been really, really juicy. So for those looking to buy cheap, I like buying cheap. And one of the downsides of the past 4 months is, I guess 6 months, really starting in October, is some of the projects I really, really like have gone up a bunch. And so these pullbacks are nice for good reentry zones, in my opinion. Shout out to some of the comments coming in. Bill Gardner with the super chat. Had the chance to meet Bill on Around the Economiverse a few weeks back.
Oh, cool.
That was fun. Bill Gardner's been a longtime supporter of this channel, as well as a big Ecomi/VV fan like myself. So we're both really bullish on Ecomi's future, which we will be covering Omi in a little bit. Nurse Cooper says, "Oh baby, making it rain." Nurse Cooper, good to see you, brother. And the chat has been absolutely alive. Chris Ashby saying hi. Sour D, Omi back to prime accumulation zones, it seems.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just looking at that, yeah, absolutely. Come back, and that breakout resistance that we're going to look at this week, my God, when it comes back to that, it's going to be such a nice technical trade. So interesting the way that chart's forming. But yes, it's we'll cover it a bit later because it's on the list.
So Johnny makes a really good point here. Hi guys, where all the excitement before the halving? Seems like my emotions are numb from the long bear market.
Yeah, that's really fair, isn't it? That's a fair description of what's gone on.
You become like a seasoned veteran fighter. Like you just, after a while, like all the scars and all the numbness, it just is different over time. And it does help you to be actually less emotional about it. But the daily drug of when you're brand new and everything seems so exciting, a lot of that is gone, especially after you've gone through a long bear market. Now, some of that excitement will come back, but it'll never quite be like it was when you were brand new and, the world seemed so mysterious, and people usually come in during a bull run. So we experience all these dopamine hits, and then we get crushed by a long bear market. But the smart ones stick around and learn to accumulate during that time. So you will see, if you accumulated well during that time, your portfolio go crazy when the bull market happens. And what's interesting is you'll still be somewhat numb, but the numbers in your portfolio will be really exciting. And you'll be somewhat numb to it and somewhat in disbelief. At least I've seen that happen to myself and a bunch of other people who accumulated the last bear market. And then the bull market that followed, we were in total disbelief. At first, disbelief that it would ever get back to what we'd even put in, but then later disbelief at the kind of numbers it hit. All right. CB and Marcel says, why is Wormhole hot and Wanchain not? And, it kind of answers his own question. Wanchain needs more exposure. Good project, but nobody knows it. That is part of the challenge. A lot of people don't know Wanchain. And when new projects come in, sometimes they catch that new, do you remember in like grade school or middle school or high school, the cute girl moves in and like, because she's new, like she gets all this attention, and she might not even be as cute as some girls that are already there, but she gets all that new attention and stuff. And it's just being the new kid on the block that causes that. One chain's got substance, and I was looking, like DeFi hasn't really hit. And when it does, that's when people start looking for substance. So Uniswap, for example, it did hit its lows back in October of last year when a lot of things were at their lows, and it was back at $4. So it's like 2.5, 3x up from where it was. It's at $11 now. But Uniswap is still pretty cheap. And like Jupiter, which is like a new kid on the market, its market cap is, getting close to where Uniswap's is, even though Uniswap is a behemoth. And Jupiter's getting pretty big as a DEX on Solana. But the type of trading volume that Uniswap has and the longevity is huge. Their market caps shouldn't be close to each other, but Jupiter's got kind of the new kid on the block appeal, as people are kind of been FOMOing into the Solana ecosystem. All right. Bugsy says, what's happening with that like button, guys? So scared. Cracked me up. Yeah, love it. Yo-Yo Mara says, hey guys, what's up, brother? All right, let's jump into some analysis on, well, I guess let's take a quick look at XRP, because we already looked at Bitcoin. And what are you seeing in the charts of XRP?
Okay. Right, so straight into the picks, I guess. I mean, XRP, not a lot here. It's just range bound. So the question I ask myself is, do I need to buy it? If I bought it, how would I feel? So if I bought this at any point this year or maybe last year, I'd be sitting on pretty much what I'd already, put into it, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. But there's no, underlying there's no major upward trend. There are some small ones, and there's a gradual sort of rising of the lows as it's being pulled up with everything else. But this isn't leading anything, and it's not what I would call the first primary trade that I'd be looking to put on because of those reasons. It's because it's just simply not a leader. Now that might change, and as I mentioned earlier, that's what you're guaranteed to see. Market dynamics change, but from a technical point of view, you want to put money in things that are moving and or have the potential to move. Now, I'd rather wait a little bit for it to prove itself, and that level is around 73 cents. And if I could only trade this and nothing else, I would probably buy some. In fact, it would be on the buy list, but just because it should do well, or it should move higher with everything else in the next bull phase, which arguably could be even bigger than the one that we've just seen. But until it actually starts to prove it wants to go higher, and whilst I have a choice, I'd choose something else. So taken in that context, for me, it's a wait. And if I held some, I'd probably shift some of the money into something else. So I might, sell 75% and then buy something that looks more like it's going to move, or maybe even more, and then just sort of go back in and buy it. Now, the thing with this strategy, markets are all psychological. It's a game of psychology more than anything else. You have to be prepared to buy it at a higher price. This is the way I look at it, and this is a technical way. So once it's proved that it wants to break out, if I've sold it at 60 cents, I might have to buy it back at 72, 73, maybe in 75 cents. But, there are people who bought Bitcoin at sort of, $4,000 and then sold it, and because it was going nowhere, and then didn't buy it again as it broke $5,000. And look at where we are now. And they'd love to have bought it at $5,000. But remember, at $5,000, it seemed expensive based upon where they bought it. So if I'm buying this at 75 cents, it's not because I think it's going to go to 76 or 77. It's because it's going to go to 90 or $1.50 or maybe $2, or maybe if things go crazy more. So that's why I'm looking for breakout points. But for me, simply, it's just a wait. It's nothing I can see at the moment that suggests that it's simply going to break out this week. But if it does, that's my level, 73 cents.
For those that are in the private Discord, if you haven't talked to Sale B&J about this, you're missing a good opportunity. I don't do the amount of research on XRP that he does. I feel like I don't even know 1/30th of what he does. Interesting things happening with all the, not all the governments, but Japan, Europe, I think Germany, even the US, aligning to probably run their financial systems on the rails of XRP in the future is what it all adds up to. And they say as much. And Sale's been really good. Like, if you haven't joined the Discord, this is part of the beauty of the Discord, is there's discussions that you're just missing out on that never make it to YouTube on the channel, but they're very good discussions. And Sale can kind of, Sale will inform you like what is going on at a deeper level with XRP. Now, is it time to buy XRP? That's the question I'm asking myself. I don't know that it is yet. I hold just a little bit of XRP. I think Sale is absolutely right about the future of XRP being gigantic, bigger than people can understand. What I agree with Paul. Like, I don't know if it's time that I'm going to load the boats on XRP. And Flare is in the same boat as XRP, in that Flare is allowing smart contracts across these chains that are going to make up the financial rails of the future system. So right now, a lot of the rails happen on SWIFT. So if you want to send money from the US and you want to send $2 million to Europe, it's going to happen on the SWIFT network. And there's nothing SWIFT about SWIFT. I mean, 40 years ago, SWIFT might have seemed fast, that you could send $2 million and it would eventually get there 2 or 3 weeks later, and you might pay tens of thousands of dollars in fees. And that was just better than what the other options are. But XRP, being the rails, can allow that money to be sent in matters of seconds or less than a second for very low cost. But the financial rail system is being updated and the laws are getting in line to let XRP be really the backbone of those rails. And so it's something to be aware of and to watch for. I don't know that the moment is right, and most of my bets are on other things, but I'm watching XRP closely because Sale makes a really good case of why XRP's market cap, if you go to numbers that are presently somewhat unfathomable. So right now the market cap's at 33 billion. But if he's right on it becoming the financial rail system of most of the developed countries of the world, that market cap could go into the trillions. And when will that happen? I don't know. I had some money in XRP during this bear market. So 2020, I put it in, and it was kind of a disappointing time for XRP because at the peak, it went to just over $1 and then to ever so briefly $1.80. And then, the SEC lawsuit against XRP had really just neutered their run in the 2021 bull run. So I felt like the money I'd put into that, the opportunity cost was really high. And mostly that was because of the lawsuit by the SEC that really held back what it could have done that bull run. So it's still down, languishing in some lows like this. Keep in mind, like, it hit like $3.30 during the previous bull run. So it didn't even go to that number because of the SEC lawsuit, and it's languishing at 1/6 of the high from 2021. At some point, I think XRP does go crazy, and I think Sale has that absolutely right. And Flare's interesting. We'll check out the charts in a bit. So for me, it's a wait on XRP, but I'm passively keeping up on what's happening with XRP because I think at some point it goes massive. Let's take a look at Flare.
So Flare is one of those ones that is seeing a lot of volatility, and it's been in a really nice upward trend that has a fairly aggressive pullback. I mean, this is percentage wise, and actually, you know, a big pullback on the chart. But the trend started a long while ago, started towards the sort of end of last year. That's where we got the breakout. And from there, if I was, you know, if I'd bought that breakout, I don't think I could see any reason why I'd get out. You know, I'd still be in it. So I think the long-term players, what we look for is a sign that the people who bought it near the low, whether there's enough distribution, and distribution is where they've decided that's it, you know, all the good news is out and they could start selling into the rest of the market, whether that's going on here. Now, to me, this looks just like a consolidation. You know, the volatility has picked up, but it's not enough for me to think that the trend is over. In line with what we're seeing in the bigger picture, it's just having a correction. Actually, it's had its correction early, it's had its rebound early, and it's just staying sideways. So if I was to have a neutral position here, I would probably, you know, I wouldn't be buying it right now, just simply because it's going sideways and it's playing within this breakout point from here to here, from this low to this high. Those are the kind of lines in the sand for the bulls and the bears, and it's playing between those and may well continue for a little while. There's something called a three-wave pullback in Elliott wave, which is 1, 2, 3, which we're seeing here, which implies that this is a correction rather than a new downward trend or start of a bigger downward trend. That's just a kind of a side to what we're seeing in the price action. But I think overall, for me, it'd be a long-term buy, but a short-term wait. I just want to see how this plays out. If I was to put some kind of what I would say is like some triggers to actually start looking at it and thinking about buying it, it'll be around this 4.5 cents, 4.5 cents area where all these highs have come in. There's obviously been some selling against them. And if the market comes back again, it's telling me actually it wants to get through it. So this area here, there's some good resistance. Might be some late buyers bought it and then they've sold out as it's come back to it. And if it can get through there, I'd be confident. But you know, nothing's guaranteed. I'd be confident that it would take the high out. So this would be my sort of alert point, where I wouldn't want to see it much higher than that without being alerted to it, because you know this is the key resistance point. This high is where it all happens. But taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture, the trend is up. I don't know what happened prior to May or whether that was the start. Probably wasn't. It looked potentially we had some prior price action, because usually things aren't that smooth at the start of the birth of a coin. Even though it went down, you usually see a bit more volatility. So I suspect there is something else. But overall, the trend is up, and that's the main trend. We're in a consolidation, but there should be more to go.
Yeah, I think as the XRP network really takes off, makes sense that Flare will really take off. They got a little bit of that new kid shine because they are fairly new, and they extend the capabilities of the XRP network by enabling smart contracts, not just on XRP, but some of the other networks. Yeah, so I agree with you, though. In the short term, it's probably going to come down a little bit more. So I would say just a wait. It's not a bad one for those in blue chip category, and this is in the blue chip category. $1.4 billion market cap. It's got a $3.8 billion fully diluted market cap. So it looks like essentially 36% of their tokens are in supply. Yeah, and that's a lot of their tokens in supply for how short it's been out. So I like to see a lot of the tokens already in supply. There are some more that can essentially be sold or get vested and kind of sold on the heads of investors. I'm always conscious of that, but already 36% is in circulation. I think it's a little bit cheaper and comes down back to like, 3.4 or 3.3 cents. And then if it continues this pattern, it'll kind of trade sideways, go up and down, and then it will break to the upside again, is my guess. All right, but for now it's a wait. Let's check out Bumper.
Yeah, so Bumper, it's back into some support zones, leaning on some support, given that the market has been volatile and given that we have seen some really good moves. I think we talked about this last week, possibly even the week before. But for those of you who maybe didn't catch those shows or are new to the channel, the view here is that their kind of use case is very much aligned to, I think, a bull market in cryptocurrencies, and actually having the desire to actually hedge, which they seem to have some really interesting ideas. Given that we've had this first wave, perhaps we need a correction for this to come into use, i.e., when things are going up, people have bought their coins, perhaps they don't think of needing to actually even protect their gains. What they need is a correction, and then they go, oh, actually, I didn't realize I could have protected those gains using one of their contracts. So perhaps we need to see a correction in order to do that. Having said that, I think general kind of pickup in activity in the market should broadly support a coin like this, and it's still pretty much range bound. I think the big picture did look like it was trying to base, and it's just, you know, it seems to be stuck and consolidating at these lows. So I do have a soft spot for it. I do think that, but that's a dangerous thing to do, you know, in my view. It's got to look good technically, and I can't want it to go up. It has to go up. So I think around here there is a lot of support. We've got rising lows, which I can say is not just, you know, a bias. There are rising lows here. It's just it's leaning on them, and I'd rather that it wasn't. So I think in the short term it's going to be a wait for me, and I would get very interested if it can break through this 6.5 cents area. I mean, you could buy some here because it's leaning against support, you know, very small amount, and then start adding to it as we go up, or maybe break the 6.5 cents area, because just simply because it's had two goes at that right bang on that level, and it's come straight off. So if it goes through it, then we're going to go up to the next level. Now, I know from the big picture chart, this 10 cents point is the massive level. This is where I could possibly just sit and wait until it breaks that, and then I'd be happy for a big move, because once it gets through there, it really means it's taking off. There's either we're in a huge bull market in everything, and this is just getting dragged up, and or, you know, other things are happening that are really positive for it. And I'd be patient to wait for that. But I think at the very least, I wouldn't want to see it go through this 6.5 cents level and not have some. So I'd have an alert there for sure. But in the short term, it should, you know, well, I'm not going to tell it what it should do. I'm just going to say there is good support around these levels, and I'd like to see some buyers come in and hold it here, and then it would be more interesting for me once it's taken out this 6.5. So for me, it's a wait, but I could see why it might be attractive to other people.
It's hard to be patient, and in the crypto market, a lot of times we lose our patience. And I remember I talk about this story a lot because it was meaningful to me. I took a lot of positions during the previous bear market, but I was still somewhat new to deciding what companies were good enough to take positions in, because literally 65% of what I invested in didn't survive. And still, even with just 35% that did survive, I still did remarkably well, because some of those positions did meaningfully well. And one of those was Axie Infinity. But before it did meaningfully well, it did absolutely terrible for a couple of years. And most people sold during that time, and they just they washed out essentially. And I remember when I was brand new in crypto in 2017, I was watching video by some YouTube creator who's not even in crypto today, but he was talking about how he had bought Tron in 2016, and it had just traded sideways for forever. And finally he got frustrated and he sold all his Tron. He had a couple $1,000s of Tron and sold it at a loss. And he was just like, I'm done. And guess what? It was like a month later that Tron went crazy and went like 100x. And I was like, wow, who would sell at the bottom? Who would why wouldn't you just keep waiting? Why wouldn't you just hold on? And I remembered thinking that to myself when Axie Infinity's land was just doing absolutely nothing for forever. And I was like, well, shoot, I guess I'm not going to be like that guy who washed out of his Tron a month before it finally took off. I'm just going to hold it and it's going to go to zero, or I'm going to do what I think will happen with this, because I think blockchain gaming is the future, just because nobody else has realized it yet. I still think that narrative is going to hold, and sure enough, it did. And then everybody realized what a big deal blockchain gaming was, and Axie Infinity absolutely skyrocketed. So I think Bumper is a big deal. DeFi is not in most people's minds. Downside protection, there's a lot of substance to what Bumper has. And when the team of Bumper has meaningful discussions with people that have been in the options and protection space, those conversations go very well. And they get what it is that Bumper's doing. Most of the crypto market doesn't get what Bumper's doing yet. That's okay. That frequently happens, just kind of like Axie Infinity and blockchain gaming. When you talk to people on an individual level and you talk to them about why blockchain gaming would be superior to regular gaming because of this idea of ownership, they would get it, but then they would still think, oh, it'll happen sometime down the road. And Bumper's probably one of those that will happen sometime down the road. And so this price that it's at is great for those that like buying cheap rather than expensive. So it's retraced right down to lows, not the lowest lows. Those lowest lows were in late 2022, but it's at some really attractive price levels now, which is a good thing. All right. We have some more to look at. We're going to take a look at present price. I definitely rate it as a buy. In fact, I did buy some more at prices just a little bit higher than this. Well, a lot higher than this, it seems like, but I meaningfully added to my position to the tune of, I added almost $50,000 to my Bumper position. And the price is even juicier than what I bought at by a good percentage. I would have gotten a lot more Bumper. Sometimes you don't know when it's going to go this cheap. And so I was buying at a pretty good price, and now it's at a very good price. That happens. All right. Let's go to, well, in the comments section, we got Brian Walsh with the super sticker. I asked most weeks for CERE or VRA if you have the time. We'll take a look. We haven't looked at CERE. I don't know how to say that project. CERE in a while. It was a good couple months ago. VRA we looked at a little bit ago. We'll add that into the list to look at. We're going to go next to DevvE, which doesn't have a lot of data to go off of.
Yeah, this is one where we're in a downward trend now, aren't we? So not a lot of data, highly risky. I don't know whether I would be holding much here now that it's broken below the low of the range. I can't get a chart on Coin Trader Pro because I don't think there's perhaps enough liquidity or data. But I mean, it possibly is there, but I couldn't find it. But yeah, we've got a lot of red going on here, and I don't like to buy into red. I like to wait for at least a stabilization in price, a bit of green, and then I could jump in. So for me, I would definitely wait. From a neutral position, I'd be waiting. If I held it, I would be tempted to get out and then rebuy when we get back into this 110 zone. I know that can be quite painful, but I'm always looking to protect capital as much as possible. Given that we are in this cycle where there should be another move up, there is a chance that one could hold on and this might turn around with it. It should turn around with it, but I can't guarantee that. So for me, it's been highly risky anyway, because it's really difficult to actually do technical analysis on something that doesn't have a lot of data and can be pushed around by just a few players who hold a lot of potentially, the coins, rather than mass psychology, which is what we're looking for. We don't want an individual to be determining where the markets go, because that's unpredictable, but en masse, the market becomes much more predictable. So for me, if you look at the chart, I'd ask you, where do you think it's going? It might stop here, but if we looked at it a few days ago, you might have said the same thing, and it's still going down. So it will or should stop at some point, but I just don't know where that stop will be. So until I get a technical signal that a reversal has happened, I have to stay out of it. So for me, it's a wait at the very least, and possibly a sell. But again, there's just not a lot of data to make a definitive call on it.
Yes. Hard to tell what it will fall to. Part of what I think is giving the price pressure is that pre-sale investors, I have some friends that invest in the pre-sale of DevvE at the general pre-sale round, and I think they got it at like 25 to 27 cents. And so the vesting, I think, happens over 10 months, and they get the tokens unlocked. And so they can generally still sell at a profit as their token to vest. And so that's putting some downward price pressure. And this is one of the downsides of token vesting pressures, is that people can sell as they get their tokens, and they're already in profit. They were really, really in profit earlier when the price hit like $2. And so a lot of times they'll have sold then and made money on their overall position. And so they can keep selling all the way, even at the price that they bought at, and still be in profit in their overall position. So this is one of the downsides of token vesting, is that it can put downward price pressure on it. Now, I happen to think it's a pretty good deal at the current price. It might go lower. If you look at where it kind of hit some price pressure below, is right at this number. See, it broke up from here. So at first when it launched, keep in mind the launch price was 40 cents. And it came out and it dropped down to 30 cents. And then it ran up, hit like 65 cents, came back down to 37 cents. And then it broke above this. So there's a lot of support right here. And it's come right down to those levels here at 62 cents. Now, will it break lower? It may. It may. Keep in mind, so it ran up to these low highs, and then it came down to $1 was kind of a floor, ran all the way up to a couple dollars, over a couple dollars, came back down to this floor. And here it broke below that floor and is trading down here. Now, it's hard for me to tell in the short term what is going to happen with DevvE. Could go all the way down to that pre-sale price. Could even go below it.
I don't think you've been showing your chart. That one's bumped up.
Shoot. Darn it. Yes, I was showing
I was trying to work out,
but not
trying to work out which chart it was.
Yeah. So shoot, everyone wasn't seeing these price pressures. See, this is when it launched and it immediately dropped. It launched at 40 cents and dropped down to 30 cents right away. And then it ran up to 65 cents, came back down to about 36 cents. And then it broke above this 65 cent mark. And when it did, it hasn't returned to that price since then, right? And that was just a couple months ago, but it's generally traded between $1 up to $2.20. So now it's broke down to these levels, and a lot of people are scared and panicked. What it is mostly pre-sale buyers can still sell, and they're still in profit significantly. If you're able to buy at 25 cents, you're at 2.5x profit as your tokens vest. And I think the vesting is over 10 months total. So they might have 2 months of their tokens vested. Let's see, if it launched on February 8th. So essentially they have 2 months of their tokens vested. They still have 80% of their tokens they haven't even yet received that they could sell. So in the short term, is the sell pressure going to exceed the buy pressure? I don't know. It depends on how much buy pressure there is. The sell pressure is somewhat understandable. The buy pressure is the variable. I don't know. They recently released their tokenomics, like a very transparent version of their tokenomics. You can read it on Twitter. It's really good. I found it very helpful, them explaining some of what they're doing. They're also going to launch projects as a launch pad. And if you hold DevvE and you stake it, can give you access to be able to buy some of those projects early. So that's interesting. I know in my talks with Tom in the past, they had talked about doing that. and that they have a lot of ESG type projects that really like what they're doing and believe in them. I don't know if it's these ESG projects that are launching through them or what projects that might be launching through their launchpad, but their token would have value even as a launchpad token if the projects launching through them are substantive enough. Now, what has me excited about DevvE is they're doing something. If this comes together, this will be absolutely huge. So part of what they wanted to do when they raise funds by doing the token sale, they're also doing their FIAS token sale, or the Litcraft game is doing the FIAS token sale. And some of the money they raise through that token sale, they want to then buy licenses to AAA level games to then bring those AAA level games on the blockchain. Now, about 10 years ago, Tom, who runs DevvE, he was running a different gaming company, and he had this idea of licensing AAA level games to then interact with his technology. And everyone told him it couldn't be done. Well, I think he was able to do it with 4 different major games. Now, he didn't license the most current version of the game. So, for example, if it were a racing game, maybe it was Forza. And if the current version of Forza is Forza 5, you go back and you license Forza 4 because they're no longer really making any money from Forza 4. So if they can license that out to you and make a big fee, say $1 million for that license, well, shoot, that's money they otherwise wouldn't have. And so that was his theory on being able to do that. And he was successfully able to do that with 4 different companies. His idea to do that in blockchain gaming is brilliant if it comes together, because you see all these games coming out on blockchain gaming, and they just kind of suck compared to where general gaming is actually at. Most of these games are far behind. Why? Because they're crypto people trying to program a game. Now, a lot of gaming companies are getting into blockchain, and they're developing blockchain gaming games, and some of those will be massively successful and in line with what people are expecting with video games. But it takes years and years and years to develop a high-end level game. Fast track to that is you take a game that everyone already knows and loves, and you bring that right into blockchain gaming and integrate it. And their blockchain, which can do 8 million transactions per second, and integrates the programming language it integrates with is just API calls through RESTful API. So they can take a game, a AAA level game, they can make it interact with essentially their database or their blockchain and put it on. They already have a marketplace so that you can buy and sell stuff. So they can bring a AAA level game once they get the license to actually being playable within like 6 months. If that plays out that way, that will make DevvE huge. It will make I would watch for their token release of FIAS coming out. Now, FIAS, it's FIAS. It's on my mind. As that one comes out, like if it kind of languishes at first when it comes out, that would be great because a lot of blockchain gaming has run up a number of months ago, but a lot of people don't know about FIAS. So if FIAS comes out, and it'll probably launch on similar exchanges to what DevvE did. So maybe Gate.io. I don't have any insider knowledge on this. This is just me guessing. Maybe Gate.io because DevvE is on Gate.io. It's on MEXC, on Uniswap as well. Maybe when it comes out, the price is pretty good. Because if they are successful in licensing those AAA level games and bringing them into their ecosystem, that will make DevvE one of the most talked about projects in the crypto space. Hey, what? David Yu and I are grabbing a Frappuccino later today. That's a big deal. David Yu is the founder of Ecomi, which we'll talk about in just a second. So at these prices, I think DevvE's a good buy. Like I would love for a lot of people if it comes down and gets even cheaper. I can't say I know whether it will. It's starting to be a pretty good buy. Like recognize that I'm heavy on DevvE. I have millions of tokens of DevvE. And so I'm biased towards DevvE, and I hold a huge bag. It's one of my biggest positions in crypto. So just realize I'm heavily biased towards this project. I've spoken to the founders, a couple dozen times over the past 3 years. So I like this one a lot, but just disclosing what my biases are towards this, and then I hold a huge amount of this myself. And I didn't know whether it'd get to these prices again, and I'm glad that it is for those that want to load up, and maybe it gets even cheaper. I don't know. Starting to be an attractive price. You know, if it gets down to anywhere near those pre-sale prices, that is an amazing price. All right, let's take a look at Ecomi.
Yeah, so there's been a little bit of interest in the chat about Ecomi, and for good reason, I guess. Quite a lot of people are looking at it, and it's come back to its support area. Where I'm really interested in it is still this resistance point. And as I was saying before, it's you might think it's strange to be wanting to buy something when it's close to a breakout point when you could be buying it lower down. But it's almost how the chart looks to me as to what it means about the future. You know, it breaking such a big resistance is such a huge barrier. There's 1, 2, 3 attempts to break. It should go on the fourth. So if it's turning around and we start to see a bit more buying here and then some green candles, the closer it gets to this point, the more excited I'll be. The only sort of fly in the ointment right now is that there is a little bit of a corrective feel about the markets or consolidation. Some may pull back a bit further than others, and the equity markets are due a bit of a correction, and or at least a consolidation. So we'll just see how different markets absorb that. But there is still a big bullish phase coming, and it's going to be really exciting. There's going to be a lot of volatility and a lot of things breaking out, and this is one that could be one of those. So but from my perspective, I do need to see that breakout happening, and I do need to see evidence of a bull market. We're still getting this range, so we're still stuck in this range. There's a lot of patience required with this particular chart here. But as I've said before, the longer the base goes on for, the stronger the bull market when it eventually breaks out. And it's that I'm waiting for, really, because I know that there won't be this will it, won't it. Once it's going, and it'll just keep moving, and it won't give people a chance to get in. And that's the sort of environment I want to see, where other people just won't buy it, and those who've got it are just going to be sitting back and waiting for the opposite to get out. So at this very short term point, I would say for me it's a wait, because I want to see it come down and then start to go up again, and then it's a buy. Longer term it's a buy, but shorter term I just want to see it dig its heels in around these lows, which it's proven to be a really good support point in the past. But I've also got to be a little bit wary when we get close to those levels, that the market might try and push it through them and take some stops out down here and then go back up again. So I'm just going to sit back and wait a little bit until we get some confirmation of support, and then as it's rising back up, that's where it becomes exciting again for me. But my big breakout point is here. My long-term view is it is a buy, because this looks like a base. We're just waiting for it to respond.
Yes, I love these juicy prices. So fantastic price. One of the difficulties they're facing is Bit4X was one of the places that U.S. investors could buy Ecomi without having to pay big old Uniswap fees. And with Bit4X shutting down mysteriously, some say shut down by the Chinese government, some say it was an exit scam by the exchange. I can't say I know for sure. Most U.S. investors don't have access to it on an exchange without paying big Uniswap fees. So that's really hurt Ecomi's price, and it's been dropping. So Ecomi just got added onto another exchange, and there probably are more in the plan, but I don't know that these exchanges are still accessible by U.S. investors, which is at least half of the people interested in Ecomi right now are in the U.S. And that's definitely where a lot of money that would be interested in Ecomi is. And so that's held the price back, and it's come back to really juicy levels, which I love these juicy levels. So I've currently accumulated more. I'm at about 120. maybe 120 something million. I don't remember the exact number. It's spread out between a few different wallets. And that's if I don't even get the Bitforex Ecomi back, where I had like 32 million locked up on Bitforex that I may never see again. If I get that back, then my total position would be 150 million or more. And yeah, I'd love to get that back, but I love these prices. So you're able to accumulate, what is it? To get a million Ecomi would cost you $670 or something. Amazing price. For me, it's definitely a buy at these levels, and I will be buying more. Not even a question. All right. Brian Walsh said, will you ask David Yu to buy up the floor on Vader Ultra Rare, please? Abe says, Bitforex got me for a cool 3 million OMI tokens. Yeah, that was interesting. I thought a lot of the exchange failures were going to be done already. I did not see that one coming with Bitforex. Let's see. I did want to take a look at Brian Walsh with the super chat. Let's take a look at CERE. And then why not add in VRA real quick? We'll take a look at both of them pretty quick on just the price side.
Yeah, okay. So CERE, whilst you were speaking earlier, I just did a bit more analysis, and what I think is going on here. I mean, we know that it's in a bull phase, a bull market. We got this breakout. So let's just get rid of that. We got this breakout at the low here, and that was the start of the trend. Pull back, breakout again, pull back. It was a little disappointing that it didn't hold over this resistance point, because that was the key resistance point. But what this could be forming is an even bigger base, which is more exciting for the longer term. So this could be a big head and shoulders pattern. This is the left shoulder, this is the head, and this is the right shoulder. Without getting too technical, it just means that the market is in a basing phase, and it tends to be quite symmetrical. So if we look at how much it's fallen from, or how big this decline was, which is around 57%, we could give a sort of ballpark stopping point to this correction, which at the moment would suggest that there's a bit of support coming in fairly close, or maybe just a little bit lower. Now, there's also some natural support that should come from this area here, which I may have mentioned last time, and it seems to be just getting through that. But I would also look at 50% as being a very important support point. So that's where it could touch and then continue its upward trend. Overall, I still think it's in a bull market. This consolidation is fairly typical of an overall upward trend that is just having a little bit of a pullback. 50% as a pullback seems crazy, doesn't it? But if you look at how far it's gone from its low, it's not uncommon for markets to do this. And there is a new bull phase coming that it should move up with. It responded to the first phase. Why not in this, what I think will be the final phase? So in the short term, today, tomorrow, the next day, next week, I might say just wait, because let's see where it digs its heels in, where it finds support. But longer term, the trend is still up. So I don't see anything that's changed that. So yeah, it's on the buy list for the big picture. Just short term, we might be able to get it at better levels.
Yeah. Chart looks pretty good. These pullbacks, like even in a bull run, it does this 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And this is a perfect example. In fact, it just did a pattern like this. As it left out of October's lows, ran up in early 2024, and then it came back, probably scaring and freaking people out. And then it took a big 2 steps forward again, and then 1 step back. Like, this is just what it looks like. It's an oversimplification to say 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but you can see the oversimplification applies, because this is exactly what it does in the bull market. So you go through these little periods where it kind of feels like everything's languishing. Oh my gosh, everything's down. These are accumulation periods. And then when it goes crazy, as we get a little bit later in the market, as it goes crazy, that's going to be take profit zones where I'm like taking profits out to the sidelines completely. So yeah, that's right now, CERE, I think it's actually a decent buy at that price. I agree with Paul that it's going to get probably a little bit cheaper. He looked for signs that it has turned around. He doesn't ever buy the falling knife like I sometimes do. All right. Let's take a look at Veracity. What are you seeing, Paul?
Yeah, I think, again, this is possibly not as good as CERE, but still has the capacity to go higher. We've got rising lows, really nice upward trend. It's hugged it and it's respected this trend line, which I think is important. It's got resistance up here at what's that, 1.7 cents. Failed just close to it, but that's, fairly typical of the market at the moment. Some altcoins are just are being bought up because the market was looking around for bargains, and most people aren't really in this space anyway, and there's still a lot more speculative money to come in. So we can't expect everything to go crazy, all the altcoins to go crazy. I think that's coming. That's it will all catch up. So it's had its first phase of a bounce, but overall the trend is up. And if I had to take a position on the long term, it would be to the upside. In the short term, yeah, it's back in its consolidation zone. There's a few coins that have done that. Even some of the majors that you'd expect to be higher have done that. It's not something that I would say is unusual at this point. And what I'm looking for is what is unusual to the bigger picture. If everything is going up and this isn't, that's a big problem. If everything's in a corrective phase, then that's fine. And it seems to be pretty much correlated to what's going on in the bigger picture, and that should all be looking really bullish, in the next 18 months. So pullbacks towards this trend line, I think, are an opportunity to buy. If it breaks it, that would be first sign that maybe things have changed. So that'd be a little warning sign. Where I find it really interesting would be a break of this 1.5 cents area, because that's where the resistance is. Actually, looking closely, you can see that's where it spiked down here and it just retouched to the cent. So that is a really key resistance point. But the overall feel of this is that the market's going up. There is rising lows and rising highs. So though the trend rate hasn't accelerated as much as some of the other markets, it's still positive, but just perhaps it hasn't accelerated as much at this stage, but that's potentially still to come. So short term, it's a wait. Long term, it's a buy.
Yeah. Veracity's price is pretty good. Like, it's still down 92% from its previous highs. So this is part of the beauty of a bear market. Now, it's not quite as cheap as it was. It was all the way down at 0.2 cents, and it's sitting around 0.74 right now. Okay. But that was last or in 2022 when it was that cheap. And those prices are gone, right? So back in close to October last year, when prices were really, really cheap still, it was about half the price it is now. So it's come up a little bit. Obviously, it went up even higher and pulled back tremendously. So it's a nice pullback. If you're looking to stock up on Veracity, it's a really good buy right now. So that's what I look at. What will it do from here? I don't know. Current market cap is sitting at $74 million. It's been as cheap as way down here in 2019. It's got a proof of view, which really could take off. I mean, the blockchain can do some things that does move the internet forward. And one of it is like, is there a real viewer viewing the ads, or is it just some kind of bot, or is it playing on the screen, not getting any attention? And so part of their narrative is like being able to substantiate whether these ads are really getting viewed or not, which there's a need for that, because advertisers want to know, like, is their ad actually playing in front of someone, or is it just playing on a screen that nobody's even seeing? So will it ultimately be successful? I don't know if it'll ultimately be successful, but I don't see why it doesn't survive into the coming bull run and do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50x from here. So I think it's a good price for VRA. And yeah, good suggestion. I want to go through a few comments in there real quick. Had some nice words. Where was it? I missed.
Well, Brian says if we're ever in Galway, we should go for a beer or a pint of Guinness. Guinness in Ireland, very, very nice. It's nothing like what we get in the UK.
Scott Walden had some kind words, said, you two complement each other so well. I feel between the two, I get a better view of crypto than anywhere else. Well, thank you, Scott.
That's very kind. Thank you.
William says, thanks as always, gentlemen. Never miss one. Good to have you here. Yeah, I love this episode myself. I learned so much from Paul. Like, there's a lot of people who cover price analysis or charting. I don't know a single one that has 30 years background in this. And Paul's been doing it at a high level for a long time. So part of what makes somebody good at this is developing a core system of principles that they follow and they don't break, even when their emotions tell them to break it. And so it's like Paul has a good system and he's been doing this for a very long time and hasn't gotten shaken out. You know, most people who do price analysis and technical analysis, they do not last a couple years in this. They start to think they know what they're doing and they just get themselves wrecked. They get other people wrecked. So 30 years track record is an amazing track record and almost unparalleled. You very rarely find somebody with that kind of background in this. So we're really blessed to have Paul joining us. Chris clarifies, thank you, Chris. I know Chris and Sale talk a lot about Flare and XRP, and Sale has so much knowledge. He watches so many videos on this stuff. Chris is sharing Flare's tokens are minted by monthly airdrops to holders. That's how they come into existence. So essentially 1/3 of their tokens are in circulation. There's 2/3 that aren't. So it seems like monthly airdrops to holders is how more of those come into circulation. All right.
Well, thanks for those comments. That was very kind. You know, it's thing about the markets is, you know, time goes really quickly, so 30 years doesn't actually feel like 30 years. And B, when you sort of enjoy doing something, it's kind of, you know, it's part of why you want to be in the market. The market's always interesting. You know, you're always at an interesting point for one reason or another. You're either halfway between, you know, a crash or something else, something news come along, or you know, something else is crashing or something else is taking off. There's always something new going on, and yet it's all the same, you know, and all a cyclical move. So it's really fascinating. But you know, I do it because I love it. But thank you. You know, I appreciate those comments. I really do.
Yeah, let's take a quick look at HBAR if you got the time.
Sure. HBAR. Yes, I mean, look how similar that chart is. It's almost exactly like the previous one, and again, the views would be the same. This is, you know, it's going higher. It's trying to break higher. We've got these higher lows. Look at these lows just gradually breaking up. Went through this resistance point. That's actually come back to retest. Markets do that sometimes. You know, when you get the first breakout, the retest that's bought, it's come back again, which is, I don't like to see it do it a second time. It's usually the first retouch and then off we go again. So it's come back again, which suggests it will go a little bit lower, maybe take some stops out down here. But I think overall it's still bullish. You know, it's still bullish. It's trying to break out. It has broken out, which is it's the right side of that breakout at the moment. It just may go a little lower in the short term. But that's what you want. We're waiting for a breakout like this in OMI. You know, if it was that breakout point in OMI, it would be a buy. So for me, it has to be in the buy category, just because it's gone through, you know, its key resistance point. It's just that in the very short term, it's consolidating a little bit. Whereas what I'd like to see is it just sort of running up a bit more. And I'm not just saying that because it needs that's part of the trend. I'm saying it because that's what technically tells me that the market is going to keep going. You know, when it doesn't hesitate, that's usually a really good, well, it is a good sign that there's a big bull market ahead. All it means here for me is just that everything else is consolidating a bit, and you know, it could just go sideways for a bit more before we get this next big run, which is you know, is coming in everything. So short-term consolidation, long-term, you know, I'm bullish.
Yeah, HBAR's market cap does solidly put them in the blue chip category. For Paul, you said short term is a wait, but then long term bullish.
Yeah.
So it's at 10 cents, and its previous highs were higher than what it's showing here. Sometimes these charts aren't very accurate. I think it went to 70 cents.
Oh, did it? I've got 56 cents on mine, just for reference.
Yeah. And even that, sometimes they wick up when you're actually like there, and these charts don't fully reflect where it went to, because it only went there for a little bit. But let's just take 56 cents as the top, though. I think it went all the way to 70 ever so shortly. So it's 80% off from that. It's not as cheap as it was. It was half the price it is now. Okay. For a blue chip, this is a pretty solid blue chip. I mean, the team behind it is substantive. The partnerships behind it, probably Hedera is going to be the ones that are around in the future for the long term. And so this is a solid blue chip. For those investing big money, they like blue chips. They just are worried about capital preservation and wealth preservation. They don't want to invest in small caps. Number one, because they want to be able to park 10 million somewhere or $1 million in each token. And a lot of the smaller cap ones, you just can't park $1 million in them. It will pump the price so much on yourself. And they don't care if they only get like 20x gains from here. You know, when you're parking 10 million somewhere, you're not unhappy with 20x gains over a year period. That is just fine. And so HBAR is a pretty good blue chip that I think has pretty good potential. It's down substantively from where it was before, so it's about 80-something% off. And where could it go this bull run? I don't know. Probably close to its previous highs, maybe breaking above them, maybe as much as 20x from here would put it at about a $70 billion market cap. Okay, so it's a safer play with still good upside potential for big money. Not the kind of upside potential I'm looking for in my riskier plays, but you can easily get it on some of the bigger exchanges like Coinbase and Binance. So I like Hedera. Do I own any? No. Next cycle, I'll do more with blue chips, where I'll park a couple of million in some blue chips. And if they only get 20x gains, I won't cry about that. All right. Last comment that we'll take a look at. Thoughts on Zookeeper market cap around 3 million and about to launch their Avalanche subnet. Zoo farming ends in 2 days, rebranding and test net this month. Interesting. Like, the Zoo team reminds me of the little engine that could. And they've been smart in that they've kept their overhead low. They didn't really raise a whole lot of funds back when they launched it. They've been running really lean, and I love that they keep pushing and they keep trying to find pathways to success. Now, are they ultimately going to be successful? I have no idea. They are on CoinMarketCap these days, which is nice. In the early days, they weren't. And so you can get a feel for what their price has done. And it did get really cheap here, about 0.2 cents, and it's now at about 0.56 cents. Will them launching on AVAX be a big deal? It looks like they're also on Solana these days. And it's probably still tradable on WanChain, which is where I traded it in the past. And one of the challenges of them going to AVAX is that could give them some momentum, but there is a lot of competition on AVAX. So with them being on WanChain, they were one of the few players on WanChain. And so basically for a smaller pond, they seem like such a big fish. When you move over to AVAX, if you don't get enough traction from that, you seem so small in comparison to the bigger fish that are there. So I don't know what will happen from that. I do think the team is very smart. Like, the video game that they developed is pretty good. The racing game, the little characters that they did that you could then, the ZooGenes characters that you could drive those with, and the way that they give them stats and everything. Like, there's something about this team I just like. And so I can't say I know what the future potential is for this, but I can say I really like the team behind it. And I like a lot of what they do. When they rolled out their Zookeeper like 2.5 years ago, it was one of the best DeFi farming / gamification apps out there, in my opinion. which tells you smart designers, smart like people behind it. And then there's Zoogene's Game, which was one of the better games out there, and interacting with your computer, but you could use a controller to control it. So yeah, I would really love to see this project succeed. And it is such a low market cap that if it went to a $100 million market cap, that's a 40x from here. Pretty dang good returns. And that's without them even capturing major traction. You'll see in a bull run that things can go to $100 million market cap and still be such a small fish compared to everything else out there. But from here, that's 40x gains upside. All right. Paul, any thoughts on, were you able to find Zookeeper?
Sorry, yeah, I thought it was more of a fundamental question, so I didn't look at it, but I
Sure.
can. So
let's see if it even comes up on these charts. It might.
Yeah.
For a long time, it didn't.
Is it just Zoo or
Zookeeper?
Oh, here we go. Is that? I don't think that.
It actually has some pretty good price history on it.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, this is the big bear market, isn't it? So this is what was ending around October last year. So that always makes me feel like it's correlated to the stock market, which based around that time, but it's just had another correction here. Overall, I think it's still basing. I think it's still making a bigger base. And what I'd like to see is this area here, big resistance, big resistance around 1 cent. It needs to take out 1 cent, and then we're off to the races. Whilst it's below, you know, it could just continue this basing pattern. But what I do like, what I think is important, is that we've seen this key low and we've got a really important higher low here, and it has been running recently as well. So in technicals, we want to be able to draw a trend line, I should say, that kind of marks the overall big picture direction. And until it had done that, we couldn't really do that with any confidence. And you could try and draw a line like that, but that's just too aggressive on the upside. It's not going to sustain that, especially from its first low. So this move here, if you look at it, the rate of its decline and rate of incline is very, very similar. That's phase one. Then we've had a correction where we can draw in the trend line, and then it should break out and we'll see a more kind of 45-degree angle of trend from this point upwards. So I think it's a buy long term, because it should get pulled towards that resistance point, and it's telling us that this downward trend is over. It's just, we may still just be a little bit early on it, and it just might take a bit more patience before it does it. But I would say any alert that gets close to that 1 cent level, I mean, you just need to be notified, and things can change very quickly in the markets, as we know. So I'd want to be notified at anywhere in this zone that it could be knocking on the door of a breakout from here. And speculatively, you know, one could take a small position here on the basis of it eventually doing that, but expecting it to do it right now might be just a bit of a stretch. I'd rather wait until it's closer and has a bit more confirmation. But you know, I tend to be a bit more cautious. So, but there will be times when we're going to be really aggressive coming up, and you'll see it possibly be at times when it looks like the market is too high, and it won't be. It'll have a lot further to go. So tune in for those in a few months' time, I would say. But for now, still in its basing phase, and it's very much a speculative buy.
For those reading the chat, Michael Huddleston gives some additional insights, which is good. Essentially says Zookeeper has changed their names to PLYR, which is probably pronounced player. Yeah, essentially become their own versions of Gala and Myria. News to come on how people can set their nodes for the ecosystem. Zoo tokens will be migrated to gamer tokens in the new blockchain. There will also be a second token called Player as well. Interesting.
So my question would be to that: how do you feel about that? Is that a positive? Is it a negative? Because you know, you guys are the experts on the fundamental side.
Really, it's like any economist will say, it depends. So,
Yeah, it's fair enough.
yeah, like, do they get traction? Like I said, they're moving into a bigger marketplace like Avalanche, and there's a lot more competition in the gaming. So in the gaming side there, so it just depends on how much notice they get. On the unfortunate side of crypto sometimes is getting noticed. Now, I do find that as money really starts coming in the markets, then people get really serious at looking for fundamentals. And that's when fundamentally strong projects do usually get found, discovered, and pumped and noticed and talked about. In this early in the market, a lot of what gets noticed is just hypementals. And so, like, there's tons of substance out there that's not really getting noticed. So it depends on how deep their substance is, how good their team is. And also some of it, like, will it get noticed? Because it's a compounding factor. Like, if they get noticed, the token price goes up a whole lot. Then the team tokens and the ecosystem tokens that the company has are worth more, and they're able to sell them and raise more funds to hire better and better people. So it's a compounding thing. So getting noticed is important. That's why some projects pay, big YouTube channels, huge amounts of money. Like one was paying BitBoy's channel $1 million a month in advertising costs to make sure that they got noticed, right? So that is a lot of funds spent because getting noticed is important. So will they get enough traction to get noticed and enough visibility that it then gets out there? I don't know. Possibly. We'll see how it plays out. So obviously they make in some very substantive changes in direction, a very focused plan towards getting a future. Now, if they're successful and they raise some more funds with this and they're selling if they're selling nodes and they sell a bunch of these nodes, that will give them additional funding. They have shown that they're good at running lean, which is important business skill. That a lot of companies, they come in, they raise $20 million, they blow through it in no time at all because they don't know how to run lean, and they close their doors, go out of business. So they have been running lean for a long time. If they're able to raise some additional capital, they probably will use that well, though I can't say we know they will. Sometimes when people are used to running lean and all of a sudden they have tens of millions of dollars, they don't know how to deal in that environment, and they blow through their money and don't get enough substance out of it. So how it comes together is just, this is early stage business investing. You're taking bets on early stage companies and the people behind them. And so that's where research comes in. Michael has obviously dug into the research on this. And I know some other Rainmaker family members have as well, and have some feelings on, they believe in this team. Clearly Michael does, or he wouldn't have this level of research on it. So it's getting a feel for yourself and researching for yourself. Do you believe in this team and what their vision is? And is that a bet that you're going to take? I don't tell people what bets they should take. I do give an idea of what bets I'm taking is all, but realize that that also is my biases. And on Mondays around the Ecomiverse, we were talking, and one of the comments in there was interesting. He said something to the fact that, Jay's just not hungry anymore like he was before, and he was saying that's why I'm missing things on Ecomi, because he doesn't think Ecomi will do well. I think he has two thoughts in there. I think Ecomi will do fantastically well, and that Omi's price is amazing right now. And just because he can't see that doesn't mean it won't happen. But am I as hungry as I was in 2020, where I was like super hungry? The amount of research that I did every day was extraordinary. Like, I did as much as I could. Like, it was overwhelming. I would do my day job and then I'd come home and sometimes research for 8 to 10 hours. No, I don't do that anymore. And I'm not as new as I used to be. So sometimes I don't look into these tokens as deep as I would have back in 2020 when I was hungry to try to learn, and first of all, how to research and identify companies that had good chances. But number two, putting in hours and hours and hours of research. I do a couple hours of research a day compared to, it used to be like 8 to 10 hours a day. And it was a little bit overwhelming to do over a sustained period of time. Kind of burnt me out. 2022 was a rough year because I was on burnout mode from all the research I had done for years. And I had to recover from that. So am I as hungry? Like, am I digging as deep on Zoo as I might have? No, there will be a lot of our Rainmaker family that will dive a lot deeper into the stuff than I will. Do I like what I'm seeing with Zoo? Decently well. I'm curious about them. Am I going to make a substantive investment in them myself? I would have to really speak to the team to really get a feel for them myself before I'd make a substantive investment. Because what I'd ask myself is, the market cap is 2.6 million. Can it go to 260 million? Can it 100x from here? That I don't know. I don't know enough about the team and their vision of this big change. And just because they're making big changes doesn't mean it will go well. Also doesn't mean that it won't. Their big changes might lead to them raising more funds, and it might catch them some traction. Matic went through a rebrand. That Matic was out there for a long time, and then they rebranded to Polygon. They put a whole bunch of money into marketing, and guess what? They went like 200x from there. All right. Cool. You know what? You'll have to jump in next time. I would love to go into Epico, Medicaid, and Beam, but next time. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Paul, especially thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. My pleasure. And yeah, we've got one from Yvonne Williams as well, who's asked for something that we could look at next week. So looking forward to that. And, you know, thanks again. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Now, the crypto market is bottomed already, and good decisions made during these months that are leading up to the blow off top that is likely still ahead of us will lead to life-changing ones as that blow off top happens. If you haven't already, take the Zero to Crypto Hero course. There's a link to that below in the description. This will help align your thinking correctly. Like, these principles on successful crypto investment, when applied correctly, will save you and make you 100x over the investment in the course. There is a code, Rainmaker, for half off. Now, this wrap is for all of you to reinforce these principles in just a fun way. All right, we'll see you soon.
Came into the space chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit bad before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. The next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, studying to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this road, cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. They go with the hate, let the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.